taking forever. What are you guys doing?
What the fuck? I thought we were going to the beach. We're at the woods. I'm wearing sandals.
And I'm wearing sandals too. What the hell?
We're camping, remember? What's wrong with you guys?
It's windy. What the heck are we doing
Look
here?
at this.
I hate nature.
Come on, guys. We need to get a move on the road. Come on. I don't want to hear it anymore.
We should take a break here.
Why? Why are you so tired?
I just got out of work and the management's horrible. Like, he thinks he rules the place. He's not even the freaking owner.
So, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, I remember my grandpa always telling me about the factory workers. I don't think it's like half as bad.
Oh, trust me, it is. Oh, let's go. Eva's over there.
Wait, first you said? Hey, you never told me about your whole tyrant thing with your like work. What is that all about?
It's just my manager. He really gets on my nerves. Like, he thinks he's a dictator of the whole store, and it's like he needs to get bosses around and do whatever he wants with us. But I mean, it gets me really pissed off. But kind of reminds me of what my mom used to tell me about the Zapatista movement.
The Zapatistas declared war on the Mexican government, saying that NAFTA meant death to indigenous peoples. This is Zapatista subcomandante Marcos speaking in the 1990s.
Nosotros tratamos de delinear un perfil a grandes rasgos de lo que podía ser la figura.
We are creating a general profile of what civil Zapatistas could look like, taking the essentials of armed Zapatismo to recognize not taking power, not wanting to hold public office, and the struggle continues for democracy, freedom, and justice, and demanding that the government place itself at the service of society, to change the relationship in Mexican society between rulers and the ruled.
We have never had these rights: freedom of expression, the right to organize, the freedom to set prices of our produce. When we produce something, it is the buyer who sets the price of our product, and that is where the exploitation begins. They pay us as little as 1 peso for our products, but don't consider the work and sacrifice which we make in the bulk and the weight of our work. And this costs us work. It costs us hunger. It costs us the little money we have invested there. And when it doesn't produce, when it does not bear fruit, we don't benefit. Others benefit, and the true workers remain the same, with their arms crossed and their land exploited.
Indígenas zapatistas toman San Cristóbal. El EZLN condena la traición de los 3 principales partidos políticos a los acuerdos de San Andrés. Julio 2003. 30 municipios autónomos rebeldes zapatistas, MARES, anuncian cambios en su estructura y funcionamiento.
On November 17, 1983, the EZLN, Ejército Zapatista de Liberación Nacional, is founded by 3 indigenous and 3 mestizo activists. On 1992, Presidente Salinas reforms the Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution, allowing for the privatization of ejidos. On January 1st, 1994, NAFTA is implemented. That morning, 3,000 members of the EZLN occupied 6 large towns and hundreds of ranches in Chiapas. Within 24 hours, the army responds by bombing indigenous communities and killing a minimum of 145 indigenous people. Mexican civil society responds with massive demonstrations calling for peace. A ceasefire is declared on January 12th. On that same day, when an army of impoverished farmers surged out of the jungle and launched the first postmodern revolution, those forces known as the Zapatista Army of National Liberation were the armed wing of a much larger movement of indigenous peoples in the southeastern Mexican state of Chiapas. On December of 1997, the 22nd of that month, the Peace and Justice paramilitary group affiliated with the PRI attacks the Las Abejas community of Actio, killing 45, mostly women and children. The Cedillo administration denies the existence of paramilitaries in Chiapas. In February of 1998, the Cedillo administration begins a campaign to expel foreign human rights observers from Chiapas. Over 150 are expelled during the next 2 years. On August of 2004, on the first anniversary of the Caracoles, the Zapatistas released a series of comuniques about the progress and struggle of the movement. They detail how their autonomous communities are governed and admit that in most communities, Zapatista women still haven't obtained equal status with men.
I don't think it's that bad what you're talking about. I mean, I grew up always seeing my dad go to work. He's been super sick, doesn't go to the doctors. He just goes to work every day because he wants to like support our family. But I mean, even then, going back to history, it doesn't compare to the Industrial Revolution.
By the year 1900, industrialization was firmly in place across much of Europe and America. The century that had just ended had been one of drastic, rapid change on a scale unlike anything seen before in history. Huge numbers of rural people had moved to crowded cities and taken up factory work. Many of them now lived in homes illuminated with electric light bulbs. Their children attended public schools. They could listen to recorded music in their homes instead of going to a concert hall. They could even watch motion pictures, talk on the telephone, and ride in an automobile. For the Industrial Revolution had ushered in the modern age, and with it came not only tremendous technological and environmental changes, but a brand new middle class of hard-working people as well.
The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain and began to quickly spread to Western Europe and the United States within a few decades. No one can give the Industrial Revolution a period of time because it varies on the state and the country it was taking place. Many people usually mention how amazing the Industrial Revolution was, but nobody really mentions its downfalls, such as slums, the meat packaging, and child labor. I admire Upton Sinclair because he was a muckraker who exposed the corruption in government and poor living conditions of workers in the factories. Upton Sinclair wrote a novel called The Jungle. It was published in 1906 and he wrote this novel to portray the lives of immigrant workers in Chicago. The purpose of the book was to expose the health violations and unsanitary practices of meat packaging. People who lived in slums, it was about 10 people per household. The slums had no windows, so the family were only breathing contaminated air, which caused many families to die. My father lived in a dumpster on 37th Street and Broadway, and I was lucky that he did not get any infection. At least he didn't share the dumpster, so there was at least some sort of ventilation. I remember my father waking up at dawn, coughing and sneezing, and he would still go to work like that. I thought my dad had it rough because he would wake up early, but during the Industrial Revolution, many people had various illnesses like king cholera, smallpox, typhoid, but mainly tuberculosis. People went to the factories to work and sadly led them to their death due to the unsanitary working conditions. The workers were not the only people dying, but those who purchased the meat from those factories. Because all the workers were ill, that caused the meat to get contaminated. No one really knows what happened in the factories, but many people say children and women were raped and brutally hit. When this issue was brought up to the community, people were infuriated and tried to make laws and acts to protect the workers. Because of the Industrial Revolution, now my father can stay home and rest and still get paid. But back then, if you were sick and didn't go to work, you were fired. I am happy that due to the working failures in the Industrial Revolution, my father and many other families can now work in a safe and sanitary environment. I remember always telling my dad I wanted to work as a child, and he would always say, "Cabrona, su único trabajo es estudiar y ser alguien en la vida." During the Industrial Revolution, child labor was at its best, but is that really true? Victoria's Secret, Urban Outfitters, Chocolate World, cigarette companies, and H&M are still contributing to child labor. We need to stop this because those children can be the next president. Well, yeah, that's what I think.
See, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a student who pays rent. You know, my parents don't pay my rent. I pay groceries, I pay bills, I pay pretty much everything. And I think it's not as bad as we think. I mean, if you think about the Great Depression, that was horrible. During the Great Depression, there was economic decline in 1929. The market crashed and money became worthless. Banks failed and policies within other countries failed. There was drought in some parts of the states, and yet there was war happening. The unemployment rose while banks closed. There were no federal welfare or social programs in place for the people. At that time, Franklin D. Roosevelt was governor of New York, and his goal was to end the Great Depression. His policies focused on immediate relief, long-term recovery, and reform in order to revive the economy. About 250,000 young people were homeless. Many lost jobs, and some children were deprived from school because some schools from their communities closed down. On the other hand, there were some lucky students who had teachers who did not care when or if they were even going to get paid again, and taught the students. There was a large majority of malnutrition that caused diseases to arise because people could not afford eggs, milk, or fruit. Many teenagers left feeling they were a burden to their families and ashamed. They tried finding life on their own. Businesses went bankrupt, family farms repossessed. That caused people to relocate. The percentage of people in mental hospitals grew, people became homeless, and the suicide rate went up.
Period of time that he got involved in a theft situation. He was sent away, did a year, trying to get some bread. It wasn't for himself, it was for us 5 kids. Put some bread on the table.
Without jobs and money, many families lost their homes. Unemployed people were evicted for non-payment of rent, and their possessions dumped into the street. Farmers, unable to sell their crops profitably, saw their land, their homes, their livestock, and their tools auctioned off when they failed to pay their mortgages to the bank. Hundreds of thousands of Americans became homeless. Some lived in hobo camps, others in shacks and tents. In boxcars on trains, or took to the open road.
Well, families were in cars, but these were phenomenal things, you know, to see a whole family with their rags pulled over them, or a little bundle of rags laying in a car, kids standing there with snotty noses.
I remember one year, we lived one place for 3 months. We didn't pay rent. The next month, we were evicted. Then we moved on to another place, got 3 months. We lived 3 different places in 1 year's span of time.
The other activity that we took part in was to help the people who were being evicted from their homes for non-payment of rent. We would organize the people on the block to take the furniture back.